Welcome to the Farmers Supply Association Ag Ride Report. I'm Randy Klepechka, agronomist with Farmers Supply Association. We're taping on March the 10th, so that means that planting season is pretty much here just as soon as it dries out. That may be a while. I mean, I've seen it, obviously we've seen it be in May before it dries out, but it's that time where when it does dry out, we're going to be ready to go. And it seems like a lot of our ground dries out quicker than it used to. I think a lot of that's just better drainage and things like that, but it seems like a lot of our ground will dry out quicker than it has in the past. So, we could be going pretty quick here if you just got to miss one rain and things could change real quickly. But up to now, it's kind of starting off as one of those years, and we saw one of these last year, and I don't remember about the year before, but last year certainly, where we get those really short windows to get everything done in. As like right now, I'm working with several wheat guys. We're trying to get fertilized. We're trying to get Harmony Extra, herbicides out, and it's either the wind's blowing or it's rains in the forecast or there's water standing in the field. There's always something that keeps you from getting those applications out. And like I said, you might get an hour or two one afternoon, or maybe a day or two at the very most to get things done. And I hope it's not one of those years, because those are very tough to deal with, but we'll deal with whatever we have. Since it is nearly planting time, I want to focus today on rice and several things we need to consider when planting rice. I want to talk about seed treatments, fertility, and weed control specifically today, and some things that we need to be considering now as we get ready to plant, as we start planting, and right after planting with some of the weed control issues. So first is seed treatments, and seed treatments are more commonly used than ever. I think we've got better seed treatments, and more people are seeing the benefits of the seed treatments, and it's just one of those good protective things that's really a good practice to use. So I want to talk a little bit about the seed treatments. Probably most people are using what is referred to as a combination seed treatment. That means they contain both a seed treatment insecticide and a seed treatment fungicide. Probably the most commonly used one over the last several years has been Cruiser Max. Cruiser Max has the insecticide and the fungicide in it. The insecticide is a neonic, is the class of insecticide that is. There's another seed treatment system that's new. It's put out by Valent this year, and that's called the Zelterra rice system. It contains the Nipsid inside, so it also contains a neonic insecticide along with a couple of fungicides. The neonics, they have both insecticidal and fungicidal properties. Another thing that we've kind of noticed with these over the years is they can kind of help mitigate some drift, from Roundup and New Path and things like that. So, if you have those seed treatments out there, it seems like your drift damage is not as bad maybe from certain herbicides as it is with others. So that's another consideration besides the normal insecticide, fungicide, vigorous things that we see from it. Again, that's kind of the base, is those neonics. Now, if you've got certain situations you want to beef that seed treatment up, and some people do this, you can add a diamide fungicide to it, or a diamide insecticide to it. The common ones there are Dermacor and also Fortenza. These are going to give you a longer residual. A lot of times the neonic-based one by itself maybe give you 30 days or so, and usually you're going to need more than that to get you to flood. So if you add the diamide to it, you're going to get longer residual. Also, I think especially with the row rice situation that we're in, of course we see the issue with the bill bugs in that row rice where we're not carrying a flood. And one of the best things they found, and there's not any great things to cure the bill bug situation, but one of the best things they found is a combination seed treatment containing both the neonic-based seed treatment and the diamide-based seed treatment. So you would add either Dermacor or Fortenza to your normal seed treatment, and if you got that combination of the neonic and the diamide together, then you're going to get improved control. You're going to get longer residuals. So, consider that where you feel like you need that longer residual with your seed treatment, insecticide, fungicide, and specifically if you're in row rice, I think you definitely need to consider this, and I would certainly recommend using it, especially in those row rice situations. So that's the seed treatments, and we'll remind people that, like, if you buy Rice Tech seed, you're going to have a cruiser-based seed treatment on that. So you're going to get, some seed comes treated already, and some of it doesn't. So you always have to keep that in mind when you're making decisions about this. Next thing I want to quickly talk about is fertility. At planting, we're thinking about generally three things, and that's potash, zinc, and phosphorus. With potash, and back a step on the fertility, our prices are down for the fertilizers this year. Some of them down considerably, almost in half, and hopefully they'll stay, in a more economical range, and that'll help our farmers make decisions, about putting fertilizer out there. Maybe not be wanting to cut as much as they were last year, and talking about cutting. But again, potash, zinc, and phosphorus are the things we're thinking about. The nitrogen will come later, of course. With potash, that's the biggie generally, as far as the yield addition and yield help that you get from the nutrients. Potash is the big one. You need to base your treatment or your rate on soil test recommendations, hopefully, if you've got that. If you're not, then I normally recommend about 90 units. If I'm going blind and don't have any soil test recommendations, I generally recommend 90 units. Some people will split that, put part of it pre-plant and part of it on up in the season. I generally don't do that. I mean, it's fine to do it, but generally I think if you put it out there pre-plant, you're fine. But if you want to split and put part of it later, that's fine too. And some people, I think a good thing would be, especially if you're cutting back your rates early, would be to use some tissue testing and see what your levels are, see if you need additional potash later in the season. So that's a tool that you can use with potash if you're trying to fine tune that a little bit. Zinc is a biggie in rice, and not all fields need zinc, but where they do, they'll really tell on themselves if they do and you don't put it out there. And it's very difficult to recover from zinc deficiency in rice, especially if you don't catch it right away. It'll be about impossible to totally recover from it. But zinc deficiency or zinc needs are normally on high pH soils and low zinc levels. There are several different sources of zinc, seed treatments, the maize product that we have that has a unit of zinc in 100 pounds of it. Also, zinc sulfate's a good source. So all of these have their strengths and their weaknesses, and holler at me if you want to talk about those and discuss those, because again, they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and you really need to be aware of that when you're choosing your zinc fertilizer recommendation, because like I said, if you don't do it right pre-plant, then you can be in deep trouble later in the season. So let's do our zinc right. Let's get it out there where we need it, in the right source and right rate and everything like that. Phosphorus is one of those that is not as critical in a lot of cases. Now, there's some soils, especially some low phosphorus, high pH soils, that really need that phosphorus. But if you don't have those situations and you're needing to cut, well, then phosphorus seems like always the first thing to look at. So make sure, if you need it, don't cut it. But it's a place, if you're looking to cut, maybe you could cut something on phosphorus. Our phosphorus sources include maize, the product that we talked about earlier with the zinc. 100 pounds of maize has 40 units of phosphorus in it. And also, of course, the triple superphosphate with 46 units in it. So again, those are your sources of phosphorus. Again, use it where you need it, but if you need to cut, then maybe that might be a place to look at. I want to finish up with weed control. I tell everybody every year about, I usually take samples, seed head samples, or samples of seed heads every fall near harvest to let the university test for herbicide resistance, especially in fields obviously where there's been escapes and we didn't get control, and see if that's herbicide resistance causing that or maybe something else. So I've sent 27 samples off over the past 3 or 4 years. Of those 27, 21 have been resistant to propanil, also 21 resistant to facet, 14 resistant to new path, 5 resistant to clincher, and 2 resistant to regiment, and so far, fortunately, none resistant to command. There's been a little bit of command resistance around the state, but not a lot, and luckily we haven't seen any of these samples I've sent off. So, looking at those numbers, again, we need to rely on pre-emerge herbicides to keep the grass, specifically the barnyard grass, from ever coming up. So that should be our goal, in my opinion, with rice weed control, especially with barnyard grass, being normally the number one thing we're worried about, is try to keep it from ever coming up, because if it comes up, as we've said so many times, it's very difficult to kill. There might be some post-emerge herbicides that are good on it, but you've got to get the right conditions. You've got to, get good conditions to spray in. You've got to watch your neighboring crops. There's just a lot of problems with trying to get post-emerge herbicide applications out. And also heat can really affect a lot of those post-emerge herbicides as well. So there's a lot of factors that keep those post-emerge herbicides from working as well as we want. So again, the best thing is keep that barnyard grass from ever coming up. A little different situation might be where we're growing Previsia or Max Ace rice. We're going to be coming back with that Previsia or that high card herbicide. So, we've got two post-emergence herbicides we're going to be using automatically. There's no resistance documented really. I think maybe one case somewhere, but very little resistance to those since we haven't been using them very long. So maybe we could cut back on our pre's there. I hate to cut back with them anywhere, but since in those situations where we know we're going to have those two post-emerge applications anyway, maybe you could cut a little bit on your pre's there, but I still don't even like it there. Also, of course, in our clear field and full page, people might want to try to cut there since they know they're going to be coming with these new path and postscript applications there anyway. But as I mentioned earlier, we're getting a lot of resistance to the new path. 14 out of the 27 again were resistant of those samples I sent off. So really, I think we need to be relying on the pre's there for your grass control. You still got your your new path and your postscript for your red rice, but as far as the barnyard grass, you still really need to be looking at a lot of your control there from the pre-emergent herbicides. One thing I want to mention there is, I talked about the new path, resistance, but maybe if we're putting that new path out in a pre-situation, maybe we can get better results. Some of our herbicides, when we put out as a pre, we don't see the resistance issues as much. We've seen that some with facet. Not everybody believes that, but some people, say that we can still get good control out of the facet pre. So it may be the same situation with the new path as well, that we can put that out pre and get some activity where we're not getting it with post-emerge applications. So consider that. Again, one of my favorite programs, and a lot of people don't want to go to this extent, but I think you need to be putting 3 pre-applications out there, really myself, and starting out with a command, and maybe add sharpen with that if you want some flat sedge and annual sedge control. Come back delayed pre or certainly within a couple of weeks or so with an overlap of Prowl and Bolero. That's going to give you good grass control, and also that Bolero gives you, some pretty good annual sedge control as well. So we can hit it with that sharpen early, and then with the Bolero delayed pre or early post, and help get us some good annual sedge control there as well. So consider that. And then finish up with something like a command and facet. I like to get that facet out there for some black-seeded weeds, especially, some things like that. So, that's kind of a 3-step option that I like. There's a lot of ways you can do it. Again, we've got command, we've got Prowl, we got Bolero, we got facet. Just mix and match any way you want, but get those applications out there and get them activated. Of course, we've got to have a rain to activate them or flush. So, if we don't get them activated, we've wasted that money. But usually that time of year we're getting some rains and can kind of get them activated, and just way better than trying to fight that post-emergence fight at the end. I also want to briefly mention League is a herbicide that can go out pre and give us some coffee bean, indigo, nut sedge control, maybe some flat sedge control. No, it's an ALS herbicide, and our flat sedges are resistant to ALS for the most part, but still may be able to get some pre-activity there. So again, a lot of things to talk about. We're fixed to get busy, and hopefully it's going to dry out and let's get some things done early this year. So until next time, this has been Randy Klepeczka with your Farmers Supply Association Ag Ride Report.